Yes. So part of your poetry is concerned with the interpretation of memory.
Yeah.
Which is like that we heard the one about being a child with your dad and the carpentry shop and running across the fields. But do you think that memories can deceive us, and do we choose how we remember events?
Definitely. It always cheat us. So it is actually this is part of the study I'm interested about, because the concept of memory has changed in the years. So about autobiography, for instance, that can be in prose or in verse, there is this problem that can deceive us, can cheat us. Before, if we think, for instance, of Victorian poets, they sometimes didn't want to say everything about their own life, but they were sure about what they were saying. They always were sure of that. With the beginning of 20th century, authors Yeats and James changed everything. They started to think that maybe memory can cheat us. So they wanted to integrate the past just from the point of view of the present. So now we are convinced about this. So it is interesting to understand that we can just catch a little fragment of reality, of what is true. So when we write some memory, we don't really are sure about that. It is just as we feel, as we see that from this point of view. Of course, it is something that we don't want to forget. That this is very important about memories, about autobiographies. For instance, an author as William Butler Yeats, when he wrote his autobiographies, he wrote, now that I've written everything down, I can start to forget. So he felt that after that he put in trust everything on paper, he can clean his mind of all these thoughts that were maybe obsessing him in some way. Because when you have a memory that you don't want to forget, it can obsess you, because the only way to remember this is to repeat this in your mind, otherwise it will be deleted from the page of your mind. So when you put down, it's a way to stop that.
Yeah, so you externalize.
Exactly, you put that there for yourself, to not forget, to polish your mind, to make clean your thoughts, but you still know that you have your things there, and you are not going to lose this anymore. You are sharing this with other people.
Yeah.
So there is this level.
It sounds a bit, have you seen Harry Potter? Have you read Harry Potter?
Yeah.
And they have the pensive, where you take you see, it's quite a nice visual actually, and the memory comes out and you pop it in a little test tube and keep it in the cupboard.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when you want to revisit it, you put it in the bowl. Yeah, so that's a bit like poetry.
That is a magic of poetry as well. It's a way to remember things. For instance, I'm still here talking about this first poem that unfortunately has not been translated in this book, I think in another book, yes. Still remembering this moment, I was 16 in front of my fireplace, feeling like that. That is really lovely. And this is sort of objective correlative, as T.S. Eliot was saying.
So is this like really attaching to an emotion that you were feeling at the time? So it's an emotional recollection rather than a mental one in a way.
Exactly.
So because what you strive to find is that feeling that you were feeling at that time.
The idea is to have again the same feeling you had in that moment, and more or less you have, because you remember that moment, how you felt, and you wrote how you felt, and so it's a way to remember.
That's lovely. And you've written autobiography as well, you said.
Oh yeah, all my production is half autobiographical and half not. And let's say that a lot of them is a mixture, because I like to confuse.
Yeah.
Myself, personally, and
Yeah.
the reader.
There are really no rules.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah. When you speak of the vulnerability of the body, and we touched on this a little earlier, is this a gendered thing to you? I mean, I'm interested to find, because there's always an ongoing conversation as to, you know, people's assumptions about certain traits are considered female or male, and when the swap over happens, when males are nurturing and females are warrior-like or strong, and also the words that go with describing these things. Is this something that you look at in your in your poetry?
Yes, more than in my poetry, also in my poetry, but more in my studies. I enjoy integrate there because, for instance, the selected authors in my books, in these academic books, are 2 homosexual and 2 heterosexual, 2 English and 2 Spanish, for instance, and that is the magic of memories and of poetry and things that we don't want to lose. Yes, and about translation, of course, you lose something, but also sometimes you get something. And first of all, I will say that even Shakespeare has been translated, and for many people it is the only way to read Shakespeare, because they don't know English and don't know Old English, and Dante as well. There are many English people that or French, they say, oh, Dante, they talk a lot of Dante, they understood the word of Dante, and they understood all this through the translations. Maybe they are losing something, but still are useful, very useful for so many things. So that is the point, it's just a compromise. But language in itself is a compromise. I'm not saying really what, I'm speaking another language, for instance, and even if I would speak English, it's a compromise, because language in itself is always a compromise between what you say and what you have inside. I have 3,000 thoughts, but now I'm trying to organize one thing to say, and when I'm talking, I'm losing other 2,999. So you just accept that. Sometimes you forgot what you are saying. So we just see that it is a way to express our word, but the real word is inside. That is the point.
Any other questions?
Yes, still about the translation. You said you translate yourself some of your poems. I think that's the best way to do, because in fact you're fluent in both language, I suppose, in English and in Italian. Meaning sometimes you have some expressions, for example in French, Italian, or so on, which you can't translate really well because they are definitely typical of one language and so on.
Sure.
So once I attended a talk about a person who translated Asterix in English. And so I asked her, are you fluent in French and in English? And she said, oh no, absolutely not. I said, well, it's kind of a shame, because I think you lose something if you don't translate yourself, because you can really translate your feelings. You can have the magic of the words in both languages. It's I think it's better when you can translate yourself.
I think the best way is to work together with someone native, because in my case I could not translate these poems myself in this way. I helped. We grow old in people's eyes, or when opening a wardrobe, the mirror takes us by surprise. We grow old, half plunged in our rivers, seeing portraits reflected when images flow among 1,000 folds. We grow old in twisted reflections of cutlery and glasses. Invecchiamo negli occhi della gente, o quando, nell'aprire un armadio, lo specchio ci sorprende invecchiamo, immersi a mezzo busto nei nostri fiumi, quando scorrono le immagini tra mille pieghe, invecchiamo nei riflessi perversi delle posate e dei bicchieri. This poem I'm going to read now is about my childhood. It is titled The Carpentry, because my father is a carpenter. Now he's retired, he was a carpenter. So when I was a kid, I used to be always in this carpentry, and he bought for me all little things that stuff he used, and I was creating the same thing he created. Like he was creating a big table, and I was doing a little table. And so after some years, I wanted to remember these moments, and I wrote this poem. So it's also about the powerful of memory. The carpentry smelled of trees and incense. My father spread white vinegar in rows, inserted steel nails with 2 short, intense blows. I imitated him, little hammer. Between my hands, his tools in miniature. I dreamt about the Trojan horse. Then, in the evening, I hid myself among sawdust. There is no safer place in the world, he said, with open arms. Nowadays, I take no cover, but in his eyes, in the calm before the storm, piece by piece, I tidied up our carpentry. La falegnameria profumava d'alberi e incensi. Mio padre passava la vinavil bianca degli incaster, infilava i chiodi d'acciaio con 2 colpi, breve, intenso. Io lo imitavo, martellino, tra le mani miniature degli attrezzi. Sognavo il cavallo di Troia. Poi di sera mi nascondevo tra la segatura. Non c'è posto più sicuro al mondo, diceva, allargandomi le braccia. Oggi che non ho rifugio, se non negli occhi sereni allora di mio padre, quiete prima della bufera, pezzo dopo pezzo, riordino la nostra falegnameria. Nothing belongs to us but dreams, confused image of the night, voices that we do not distinguish anymore. Nulla ci appartiene se non i sogni, le immagini confuse della notte, le voci che più non distinguiamo. Childhood was too short. I ran across a field, accounting backwards. In the heart of this, the night fell, and we saw mud eyes only. Now we can only cling to dreams, to the unknown. È durata troppo poco l'infanzia, una corsa sul prato, un contare alla rovescia. In mezzo è caduta la notte e non abbiamo visto che occhi infuriati. Non ci resta che aggrapparci ai sogni.